Generation X was raised by parents who would be arrested today, and that's exactly why we turned out stronger. While today's kids are bubble-wrapped, GPS-tracked, and professionally supervised, we were doing things at age 6 that would trigger a CPS investigation in 2025. You're 6 years old, sitting on your dad's lap, hands on the steering wheel of a moving car, no seatbelt. His hands are off the wheel, you're actually driving. Or your mum leaves you alone in a hot car for 20 minutes while she's shopping, and nobody bats an eye. This wasn't neglect, this was training. And the psychology behind it created a generation that sees the world completely differently. Let me show you why. Your mum pulls up outside the shops and tells you to wait in the car. She'll only be 5 minutes. You watch her disappear through those automatic doors. 5 minutes becomes 10. 10 becomes 20. You're watching strangers walk past, fogging up the window with your breath, drawing shapes in the condensation. Today, safety is a notification on a screen, a green dot on a tracking app, a text me when you get there message. But you built something different in that supermarket car park. You built an internal compass. You learned that being alone wasn't dangerous. It was just part of life. And here's what's psychologically important about that. You developed what researchers call an internal locus of control, the belief that you, not external circumstances, are in charge of your safety. You learned to trust your gut because there was no one else to trust. Once you had that internal compass, the neighbourhood became your kingdom. Think about the woods at the end of the street or that vacant lot behind the shops. By today's standards, these were dangerous, neglected spaces, but to you, they were laboratories for independence. You'd spend entire afternoons building forts out of whatever you could find. Discarded plywood, heavy carpet remnants, milk crates you borrowed from behind the grocery store. There were no instructions and no adults to help you. You learned physics by trial and error. If you didn't overlap the boards on the roof, the rain was coming in. You learned the sting of a splinter and how to pull a rusty nail out of a 2x4 with the back of a hammer. But here's what modern child psychology misses about those forts. This was where you learned to deal with people. You had to decide who got the best seat in the fort, who was in charge of lookout. If you couldn't get along, the game ended and you were stuck at home by yourself. This was unstructured social development. No parent there to mediate, no teacher stepping in. You learned how to negotiate, how to compromise, and how to stand your ground. These weren't lessons from a book. They were earned in the woods while your parents thought you were just playing. And then there was the bike. Your bike wasn't just a toy. It was your horse, your escape pod, your first taste of real freedom. You'd spend hours customizing it, clipping playing cards to the spokes with clothespins to make it roar like a motorcycle, wrapping the handlebars in colourful electrical tape or adding a banana seat. You knew every shortcut through the alleyways and every jump made from a propped-up piece of plywood and a brick. You didn't need a map or a phone to find your friends. You just looked for the pile of bikes dumped on a front lawn. That was the universal signal that something was happening. You weren't following a blue dot on a GPS. You were building spatial intelligence. You were creating a mental map of your world. And more importantly, you were learning how to assess risk in real time. Which hills were too steep? Which jumps were doable? Which routes would get you home before the streetlights came on? You're flying down a hill on your bike, feet off the pedals, wind in your face. The front wheel catches a rock. You go over the handlebars, you hit the pavement hard, gravel biting into your palms, blood already running down your shin. You limp home, knee throbbing. You walk through the door. Your mum takes one look at you, sighs and says, "You're fine. Go wash it off and get back outside." So you do. And you wear that scab like a medal for the next 2 weeks. There were no elbow pads, no knee pads, no helmets. Most kids couldn't even find a helmet in a shop if they wanted one. But psychologically, this created something important. You learned early that hurt and damaged are two different things. A skinned knee hurt, but you weren't broken. You could keep going. This distinction, the ability to tolerate discomfort without catastrophizing, is something many people struggle with today. But you learned it on the pavement at 8 years old. If you're a Gen Xer nodding along to these memories, hit that subscribe button. And drop a comment telling me what year you were born and what your most Gen X moment was. Let's see if we're all sharing the same scars. Your mastery of the neighbourhood extended to the machines in your life too. You grew up in an era where the things you owned weren't black boxes. You could see the gears, you could smell the grease, and most importantly, you were expected to understand how it all worked. Think about the first time your bike chain slipped or your tyre went flat. You didn't wait for a professional. You flipped the bike upside down, balancing it on the seat and the handlebars. You got grease on your palms and black streaks on your t-shirt while you worked the chain back onto the sprocket. By the time you were 10, you weren't just a rider. You were a mechanic. That can-do mindset was everywhere. You watched your dad under the hood of the car on a Saturday morning. You were the one holding the flashlight, learning the names of parts, alternator, spark plugs, carburetor. And when the television started to flicker, you didn't call a help desk. You gave it a firm tap on the side. You'd climb behind the massive cabinet to check the RCA cables, those red, white and yellow plugs that were always tangled in a nest of dust. Psychologically, this built what's called self-efficacy, the belief that you could figure things out, that with a screwdriver, some WD-40 and patience, you could handle whatever the physical world threw at you. Summer afternoons meant one thing: stay outside until the streetlights came on. Your mum made it clear. You come in one more time, you're staying inside. So you stayed out. And when you got thirsty, you knew where to go. The garden hose. You'd turn on that spigot, let it run for a few seconds to get the hot water out, then drink straight from it. That water tasted like rubber and grass and summer. And you didn't care. Nobody was worried about germs. Nobody was hovering. This was what child psychologists used to call benign neglect, though that term makes it sound worse than it was. Your parents weren't neglecting you. They were trusting you to handle yourself. And that trust created something powerful. It created independence. You learned that you didn't need constant supervision to survive. You didn't need someone checking on you every 5 minutes. You were capable on your own. But while you were tough enough to handle the world outside, you were smart enough to respect the rules inside. Because when you stepped out of line, consequences were swift. You mouth off at the dinner table. Before you even finish the sentence, you hear it. The scrape of a wooden spoon being pulled from the drawer. You don't need to be told twice. Parents used wooden spoons. Some used belts. We're not here to debate whether that was right or wrong. But from a behavioural psychology standpoint, it created immediate cause and effect. Actions had tangible consequences, not a conversation, not a timeout, a clear, direct response. And that wiring doesn't disappear. You grew up understanding that your choices mattered, that you couldn't talk your way out of everything, that sometimes the world just hits back. But if the weekdays were about rules, the weekends were about freedom. Saturday mornings were different. It's 6:30 in the morning. You're awake before anyone else. You plant yourself in front of the TV in your pajamas. The Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, He-Man, Transformers, Thundercats. For the next 4 hours, that television is your world. And here's the thing, if you missed it, you missed it. There was no streaming, no catch-up. You had one chance. This taught you something about time that's almost impossible to learn now, that some moments only come once, that being present matters. Psychologists call this delayed gratification, but it's really about understanding scarcity. You couldn't have everything whenever you wanted, so when you got it, you paid attention. Perhaps the most quiet, powerful lesson you learned was in the classroom. Education back then was analog, slow, and final. Without the internet in your pocket, your brain had to be the hard drive. Today, knowledge is a commodity. It's something you Google and then immediately forget. But for you, if you wanted to know a date in history or the capital of a country, you couldn't just look it up. You had to know it. You had to own that information. Think about the sound of the mimeograph machine, that rhythmic thump swish as it turned out purple-inked worksheets that were still damp and smelled like chemicals. You had a number 2 pencil and a single piece of wide-ruled paper. If you made a mistake, you couldn't hit undo. You had to erase it, deal with the smudge, and keep going. This built what neuroscientists call deep encoding. Because you had to work for your knowledge, you remembered it. You weren't just skimming the surface, you were diving deep. And that created a focus muscle that's almost impossible for kids to develop today. When you were writing an essay, you didn't have 20 tabs open. You didn't have notifications pulling your attention away every 30 seconds. You had your notes, your textbook, and your own thoughts. You learned how to follow a single thread of logic for an hour at a time. We're halfway through, and I want to hear from you. What's the biggest difference you see between how you were raised and how kids grow up today? Comment below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now so you don't miss the next deep dive into what made us who we are. As you got older, that sense of independence took on a new form. It wasn't just about where you could go on your bike, it was about what you could earn. For Generation X, your first job wasn't a resume builder. It was a raw introduction to the adult world. Think about the paper route. If you were 12 or 13, this was your first contract. People relied on you to bring the world to their doorstep. You'd wake up at 5 in the morning while the house was still silent and the air was freezing. You'd sit on the garage floor folding heavy Sunday editions and snapping thick rubber bands around them. You'd load up a canvas bag that weighed half as much as you did, slinging it over your shoulder before pedaling out into the dark. You learned the weather in a way most people never do. You navigated the neighborhood by memory, hitting the same porch at the same time every single day, and once a month you had to go collecting. You'd knock on doors, stand on the porch, and look an adult in the eye to ask for the money they owed. You were learning how to handle rejection, how to keep a ledger, how to be responsible for a service. If the paper was wet, you heard about it. You weren't a child in those moments, you were a local businessman. And for those who didn't have a route, there was the fast food counter. When the register jammed, you didn't panic. You grabbed a pen and paper and calculated the tax by hand. You were working in environments that were loud, greasy, and high pressure. You learned the value of $1 because you knew exactly how many floors you had to mop to earn it. There was no direct deposit appearing in an app. You were handed a physical paycheck. You walked it into a bank, stood in line, and felt the weight of that paper in your hand. This built grit. Not the motivational poster kind. The real kind. The kind that stays with you when no one's watching. As you moved into your teenage years, you entered a space that simply doesn't exist anymore. You were a latchkey kid, letting yourself into an empty house with a key around your neck. There was a note on the table. For the next 4 hours, you were the master of your own time. Nobody was structuring your afternoon. Today, a kid's schedule is managed like a corporate merger. Tutoring, soccer, organised playdates. But you had the gift of boredom. And boredom, psychologically speaking, is the birthplace of creativity. When your brain has nothing external to process, it starts creating. It starts imagining. It starts problem solving. You learned how to entertain yourself, how to manage your own time, how to be alone without being lonely. Every phone call was an exercise in social courage. You'd stand in the kitchen, stretching that tangled yellow phone cord as far as it would go. You dialed a home phone, not a smartphone. You had to bypass the gatekeeper, also known as your friend's parents, before you could even speak to your friend. You had to use your polite voice, state your business, navigate an adult conversation just to get, hang on, I'll get them. This was face-to-face social training. Even over the phone, you couldn't hide behind a text. You had to speak. You had to be articulate. You had to handle rejection in real time if they said your friend wasn't home. And when you finally got out of the house on a Friday night, you disappeared into the dark. There was no GPS tracking your every move, no social media documenting your mistakes for eternity. If you did something stupid in a parking lot at midnight, only the people who were there knew about it. You had the freedom to be messy, the freedom to try on different versions of yourself without a digital audience judging every move. You were forming your identity in private, away from the constant noise of instant feedback. So here's what it all comes down to. Generation X was forged in a world that trusted us before we earned it. We were given responsibility before we were ready. We were left alone to figure it out. And that created something rare, an internal compass, a quiet confidence, the ability to handle whatever comes without needing permission, supervision, or validation. You're not outdated. You're carrying capabilities the world is forgetting how to build, and that's your superpower. If this hit home, subscribe and share it with another Gen Xer who gets it. Comment with your birth year and your most Gen X memory. And if you want more deep dives into what shaped us, hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.